and pilot things, it's always something happening. My name is Hege. I am the director of InNovation Norway in Americas. I'm also the chair of this Women in Innovation initiative, and I am very, very excited to be here with you and kick this off as the women. I think it's the month of the women, or Women's Month, or whatever we call it. It's the celebration of women in entrepreneurship that we will have today, and that will also continue on the International Women's Day next week. If we jump straight into it, this is a panel that we've called Model Sustainability, and we will learn from 3 women-led startups. We are missing one. I am sure she will log on soon. But we'll get moving with the 2 we have with us. We are very, very excited that Elsa and Jessica are here with us today, and I'll get introduced. I'll introduce them in a little bit. But these 3 women-led startups that we will have from today have developed sustainable solutions for the food and restaurant sector, and each are in a different phase of growth. And they'll share their experiences launching their products and their companies, creating sustainable business models, and striving to have a positive impact on the environment and the world as we live in. So we're very excited to have you here with us. And I will briefly, and the agenda for today is that I will introduce all 3 panelists, then we'll dig into and hear a little bit more in details from each 3 of them, your personal journey, your story, how you founded your company, what was your lighthouse, your vision, and the why for what you did. And then we will have an open discussion on a few of the challenges and the hurdle that's facing women entrepreneurs today. And for all the audience, very excited to have you with us. You can ask questions in the chat, and I will interrupt the panelists or ask them to, or direct them to the panelists, and they will answer them as we move along. So please just type any questions you might have, and we'll take them as we move along. We would love this to be a very casual and relaxed and based on discussions. So any questions or comment, we might skewer away from the agenda if we end up in an interesting path, and we're hoping this will be valuable, with insight that's valuable for all of you. So I will start with the introductions, and then we'll move into the presentations. And there's Maija. Welcome.
Hello. A new browser helps sometimes.
Yeah, such is life. We're glad to have you here with us. I just introduced the sort of the format for today, and now I'm going to jump into the introductions, and then I'll leave the floor to you guys. But if we start with you, Maija, then you are the Chief Innovation Officer for Gold&Green Foods from Finland, a serial entrepreneur, and you founded a company about 6 years ago, and you founded it with a group of food scientists, and you have grown the company and to success, and it was acquired a few years ago, but you stayed on as the Chief Innovation Officer. And you're part of the whole plant-based movement where you promote Norwegian ingredient and diets. So welcome, Maija.
Thank you.
And then we have Elsa Bernadotte, who's the president and co-founder of Karma. And Karma is a food app for food waste solutions that you started in Stockholm, but you are now in several markets, including France and UK. And the purpose of your app is for retailers to upload their food waste or their leftover food, and so that consumers can buy that for a discount. And you are also a serial entrepreneur within the food industry. So welcome, Elsa.
Thank you for having me.
And then finally, Jessica Lee is the co-founder and CEO of Savvie. And you're originally from the US, but we lived in Norway for the last 10 years. And you used to be a consultant in the energy space, and you wanted to dive into something new, and then started up Savvie, which is an app for food businesses that predict what they will sell to avoid the risk of overstocking, of having leftovers, reducing the waste. And you have about a team of 7 people in Oslo, and growing fast. And I think you also used to be part of the Antlers Accelerator, right? So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
All right. And now I will leave the floor to you guys for a little more on your personal story. And Maija, we'll start with you if that's okay. So I'll give the screen over to you.
Yes. Sorry, one thing. How do you share screen in this? What is the button that you need? Do you need?
Is that the little TV icon there at the bottom? My apologies.
Share screen. Okay, I found it. Yes,
Good.
cool. Alrighty. So here we are. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, you can.
Yes. So very, very quickly, I'm not going to have like a nice slide set for you. Yeah, so Gold&Green is a sustainable food tech company. So we were born in Helsinki about 6 years ago, founded. Our mission is to break the meat habit. So we see that the meat habit is some kind of like a societal design problem, and we really need to do something for that. The main motivation for the development has been the plant-based paradox. So people really like the idea of plant-based, but if you then start looking at the products, they're full of all kinds of stabilizers and filling agents and binders and preservatives whatsoever, and it might be even like 30% of saturated fats, etc. Then at the same time, many people also like the idea of clean label, but then you start missing really like where's the actual good mouthfeel and where's the protein. So we really want to like bring something to this equation. We have developed a set of products that are naturally healthy. Oats and legumes are the main ingredients, so it's not so common to actually have meat alternatives based on oats, but we have managed to do that. We have few products already in the line. So we have the pulled oats, which was the first product that we made. Then we have a daily oat bites, which is more like a protein to go, like full of flavor, snacking protein. And then yes, here's on the right hand side is our factory. So we have this 300 square meter, 300 square feet factory near to Helsinki, and there we are producing our own products and also developing new lines. So this is briefly the Gold&Green.
Thank you. Was that your presentation?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear you. Thank you. It's very exciting what you guys are doing. So Jessica, I will leave the word to you then.
Perfect. So I'm not as well prepared as Maija, so I did not come with a presentation, but I can tell you about how we came up with the idea of Savvie. So Putri, my co-founder, and I, we met in the Antler Accelerator program. We're both super huge foodies, very passionate about food waste. And we knew we wanted to do something very early on in the food waste space. So we actually, as a consultant, took a very logical approach to figuring out, where can we make the biggest impact? And we realized that, the two biggest sources of food waste are from individual end consumers, which a lot of businesses like Karma are targeting, and then also food retailers. So basically anywhere where you could buy food. Coincidentally, also a user on the Karma platform. But for us, we really wanted to figure out, how can we help these food businesses reduce food waste? Because we realized that, it's difficult reaching out to each individual consumer, but you can kind of leverage economies of scale when you can kind of reach out to businesses. So we actually did a lot of interviews to really find out, what is actually at the crux of this problem? What makes it so difficult for them to really get this under control? And something that almost all of them came back to us and told us was that, it's just so difficult to know who is going to come in and what they're going to buy. And then we thought, okay, so if we actually develop a system which will help them make these decisions more accurately, then we would actually stand a bigger chance of helping them reduce the food waste that they have at the end of the day. So that's kind of where the thought behind Savvie came about. And then we basically realized that, these businesses are actually sitting on top of a lot of data. So we were able to kind of develop an algorithm which will use their kind of personalized data to help each individual store basically predict what they're going to sell and then give them recommendations on how much they should actually have in stock. So they don't risk kind of selling out on one hand, which is really bad for these businesses, but they also don't have, you know, too much food left over at the end of the day. So that's Savvie in a nutshell.
Very exciting to hear. And then Elsa, we'd love to hear from you too.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Elsa. I'm one of the co-founders of Karma. And similar to Jessica, we are passionate about tackling one of the world's largest climate issues, food waste. So since we founded the company 5 years back, we've been building technical solutions to make sure that food produced is food consumed. And more concretely, what Karma does is that it's an app where we help restaurants, cafes, and grocery stores to sell their surplus food directly to consumers at a lower price. And by doing so, the restaurants and the grocery stores, they can turn a previous loss into a new revenue stream, obviously attract new consumers to their stores. Consumers get to buy this great food for a lower price, and all while we actually take care of the food that we have at our disposal and create a more sustainable environment. So it's a win-win-win. Yeah, we launched in, we're a Sweden-based company, started off in Stockholm, and we now have over 1.5 million users, 10,000 connected restaurant partners, and as you mentioned earlier, have scaled into new markets. So it's been a crazy but very, very fun ride. But one thing that I do want to mention is that it has not been straight in any way. We started off actually very differently from where we are today. So usually I say that even though I love where we ended up, like the first year was incredibly frustrating because we had to do like 9 months of failure until we sort of found what would become our mission. But what sort of united us in the beginning was that we knew that we wanted to use our technical skills and entrepreneurial background to build something that could have an impact on a global scale. And we ended up sort of finding this, I wouldn't call it niche because it's such a massive problem, but found our way into like, okay, we can apply those values into the issue of food waste and actually find a way to solving it. And I'm mentioning this because I feel that that's a big part of our journey and something that I think a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs don't really hear that much about. So it's been a rocky ride, but a great one for sure.
Yeah, that's very exciting to hear. And I think the rocky road is is a road that many have traveled. And if we dig a little deeper into that specifically, and this is a question for all of you, what have been the biggest barriers being a female founder, and maybe both being a female founder in general, as well as in this sort of track of circular economy? What has been the things that you felt that you had to overcome the most?
Yeah, maybe I could start. Definitely in the beginning, you know, the hardest part has been that, like, you know, when you're really introducing something so new, you know, it kind of like sounds so ambitious that it's like really hard for people to kind of like believe in that are you really saying that you're bringing out a new protein, not just a new product, but like entirely new protein, and kind of like when you get over this feeling that, oh my God, they must think that I'm totally crazy, it's like then you start enjoying it and feeling that, like, yeah, really, we are introducing a new protein. How often do you hear that? So actually, I really think it's like all in here that, you know, like when we start putting the mindset into that we're really doing this, and hey, I mean, you only live once. Why wouldn't you do something that really has a big impact?
I think something that we've definitely experienced was that when you're working kind of in the tech space and also with innovation, the solutions require a lot of behavioral changes on the part of the user or you know, the customer, and that has been, you know, really challenging to really kind of find that balance of, you know, how much we should cater for in our solution, and, you know, what is kind of their responsibility to kind of, you know, pick up this tool and actually integrate it into their day and changing some of their processes, or, you know, should we kind of tailor everything to kind of the as is situation today? I think, you know, deciding you know, what they should be responsible for, and also how much we should help them kind of adapt, has been really, really interesting for us. And probably will be a challenge for any sort of tech forward company in the innovation space. So yeah.
I mean, from our end, it's something that that's been a challenge for us, is to really change the perception of that you need to choose between cost and profit. A lot of the times people ask us, like, are you a non-profit? And like, it's interesting, why would they just assume that that's what we're for, just because we're working within the space of having an impact and trying to solve food waste? But that's very, very common. What we're really trying to get across is that we're for profit because we think that, we strongly believe rather, that we need to be for profit and be a profitable company to be a sustainable company overall, and in order to able to solve this on a global scale. And I think our model is like the proof that one doesn't actually exclude the other way around. Like, by having an impact, you can make more profits. That's a really key point towards the industry, for example, they want to be sustainable, and they definitely want to be perceived as sustainable. And sometimes they think that, but if I do that, it means that it will hurt my bottom line. So we are educating the industry to show them, like, no, this is actually a way to strengthen your bottom line. There's a win-win here.
Yeah, and maybe I could also continue a little bit about this development side. So it's really important that, you know, when you get started, you kind of like stick to something that, you know, you think that you're going to conduct something, and then like see only afterwards, okay, where did we go? Because there are like so many different opportunities, there's so many different doors opening all the time. So you kind of like have to focus on that. We have set our mind that now we start this, and then we accomplish that. So like only afterwards, just have a look at what was really the outcome. So I always say it's almost like a doctor's logic that, you know, in the middle of the surgery, you don't change from knee to the heart surgery. So you really know what you're doing, and only afterwards you evaluate that, was this the right thing to do? And if not, then you move the direction.
Also adding on to what Elsa said, I think that's also something that we've really experienced as well, is that, you know, there is no kind of trade-off between sustainability and profitability. And I think a lot of investors see kind of, you know, impact-focused companies as being generally less profitable than kind of, you know, purely financial-focused companies. And I think that in general, that's a perception that really has to change, because I think in the future, sustainability will start to play a bigger and bigger role in terms of kind of the core purpose of companies and the mission of companies. And I also think that, you know, in order to have an impact, you need to be able to have that powerhouse behind you that will allow you to scale and reach lots of users to actually make the change that you really want to see. So definitely agree with you there.
Great. Yeah. And I think exactly that. And I think that might be an educational issue as well, to educate sort of startups and companies and people that even if you are impactful and thinking sustainable, you can also be profitable, and maybe even more profitable. You know, there's a great opportunity here. We're getting some questions, and I will ask one from Alex, who says, great start. How much did you know about your industry before you launched your business? And how did you build your network along the way to launching your business? Any of you?
I can start. So I would say I had a company previous to Karma that was in the food industry as well. So I think from my end, I ended up knowing a little bit about our industry. But I think I'm not sure that has helped me that much, to be honest. It doesn't really matter that much, because there's so many things you need to learn anyways. I wouldn't want that to stop anyone, even though obviously there's benefits to it. But when things are moving so quickly, and especially if you're innovating, like, there's going to be so many unknowns that you'll have to tackle and things you'll have to relearn anyways. And in order to, how did we build our network along the way to launching our business? I think that's a constant, at least something that we try to do constantly, not something that we do once in a while, but just constantly just being in touch with people in the industry, not only when we need something or we want to sell something, but just being in contact. like I have to have lunch anyway, so just like checking in with a 15-minute call or just have a walk, just to sort of get an understanding of what's happening there, because sometimes you think that you're sort of on top of things and then you realize that you really missed something because you haven't actively asked for it. And also I've just found that generally it's during these informal chats that you can really get like valuable insights that can help you in your business and developing your business model that you weren't really foreseeing, and you're missing those if you're only like staying in touch with your network when you're actually after a particular thing. But the difficulty there is like you could do that 24/7, like full time. So I try to just like have as a goal of like X amount of people within X amount of period. Just, okay, have I been in touch with someone during this period, and how many that is and during what time period? I think that depends on who you are as a person in your role at the company and the industry, but that's something I try to apply at least.
Yeah, I know about this industry question. I really think that, like in any case, when you're founding a company, you really have to have this fresh mind. You cannot really like think about that. I know my industry and let's now just, follow exactly the rules that were set before, because, we are here, we are supposed to be the disruptors. So it's really our task to actually change the rules of the industry. So actually, I wouldn't also say that it matters so much if you don't really know the industry that well. It's more about that, kind of like, what you're searching for, and really like, like trying to search for the answers and really to be super passionate about that you really want to get everything out of it, and really like, build your own picture of what it is in this industry.
I totally agree. I mean, I didn't come from the food industry. I just really liked food. But I did work on a very short project when I was at Deloitte with the Eat Foundation. And they are kind of this more global player that is working to, improve the global food system. And they're doing, research on a very, very high level. So I wouldn't say that it was kind of 100% directly related to what I ended up doing at Savvie, but it definitely kind of opened my eyes to kind of a lot of the challenges that were in the food space, especially, for sort of more developed countries. Food waste is a very big problem, and probably one of the most important problems that we have to tackle. So, and I think also, just having fresh eyes, like Maija said, and just being able to dive in and learn everything you can actually is somewhat of an advantage, because you're not sort of weighed down by, the way things used to be, or the way things are. And actually think it gives you an advantage in knowing kind of, what you can change, and not being limited by sort of the established status quo.
Thank you. We have a question, and we talk a lot about funding being one of the biggest issues for in particular in the growth and expansion phase for a lot of female startups or women entrepreneurs. And one of the questions we have here is, I have heard that when a woman is starting the financing process, the answer is often, this is a great idea, but, ... What are your feeling of that? Does this match your feeling and experience? Do you often meet that kind of question mark?
Who wants to start? I can say in a few words. I mean, definitely it's, of course, this could be always the case, but it's really not so much dependent on if you're a woman, because it's really, of course, if you're just putting yourself in the position that, well, I'm not really doing this, but if you really are very strong and kind of like very, very like being very strict with your thoughts that I'm really doing this and we're doing this anyways, and kind of like, trying to be very comprehensive about that. This is the plan and this is how we're doing it. I don't really think that, it would be that because if you're a woman, sometimes like suddenly it would be a different thing. But of course, maybe it's more about that. It's like the barrier is even higher there, that you really have to be very convincing. Or how do the others feel?
I can add something to that. I think definitely when we just closed around right before Christmas, and definitely when we were in the fundraising process, we did get a lot of like, oh, this is an interesting idea, but and I think while we were raising a pretty early round, so our strategy was basically to focus on the people who really believe in your product. and sort of not really waste, you know, if you have to convince an investor that your idea is a good idea, that's not the best way to spend your time. I feel that you should focus on the investors who actually do believe that this is going to be a big thing and convince them to come on board. That has been kind of what we usually focus on, and I kind of agree with Maija that it's not really a woman problem. It's a every entrepreneur problem. So that's just kind of, you know, the challenges of fundraising, but you know, you'll get through in the end eventually.
But as a follow-up on that, do you think there's differences though for being based in the Nordics versus the US or other, you know, the Nordics are maybe a little bit further along in diversity than a lot of other countries? Do you think there's a big cultural gap there?
Was that to me? Okay, I can answer. Yeah. I think yes and no. I think in terms of sort of gender equality in the workplace, I definitely think that Norway and all the other Scandinavian countries have come very far in terms of being accommodating to females in the workplace. But at the same time, I also feel that when you are kind of looking in the startup environment, I don't think it looks very different whether you're looking in Scandinavia or you're looking in Silicon Valley. At least my experience is that, you know, generally there are not a lot of women in the startup space, and like slowly there are more and more, but I mean, we are still greatly outnumbered by men. So I don't know if any of you feel differently about that.
Well, I can share. I'm struggling a little bit to answer this question because I founded Karma with 3 guys. And in my previous company, I also had a male co-founder. So I've never raised money being a sole female founder or only female founders, meaning like there's always been men at the table on my side. Even though I've had meetings on my own, I just find it really hard to sort of distinguish how much of an impact that has had, because I think it can contribute quite a lot. Yes, I don't really know. And I mean, we've gotten a lot of no's, even though I have male co-founders, and we've also gotten yes. And it's so hard to know what is what here. And I've tried to be a little bit cautious with making too harsh conclusions with very subjective data. But one just like small thing that I tried out during one of our rounds was that I noticed that during a lot of other pitches, it was me and one of my co-founders. So we usually took the meetings together. And I could find that in the beginning, if I was too smiley like this, if I was like too approachable almost, I felt I wasn't taken as seriously. Whereas he could, I mean, he's a very smiley person also. So he constantly looks like this, where it's not really natural to me. So I realized that even though when I went into pitch mode, it felt natural to me to be more positive, because I want to show how much passion I have for this, how much I care. But it sort of felt like I wasn't taken as seriously. So I tried to think in my head of like being a puppet versus a cat. You know, a puppet is like, you know, you're seated in like you're showing your engagement by what's moving forward, whereas a cat is more like this and more composed. So I tried that approach and changed it, and I could tell subjectively, or this is my own impression, but I could feel a shift in how they sort of acted towards me. So in general, I tried to be a little bit more like a cat in the beginning and be very to the point and quite data driven. And once I feel that they've noticed that I mean business when I'm talking about this, then I can become more soft in the end. But just like, you know, I have no idea whether this is reality or just in my head, but it's something that I've noticed that I've applied. Whether that's a female thing or a personal thing, I don't know. Could be something about me as well.
But this is totally amazing. I mean, this tip, like being more like a cat in the beginning, I think this is totally amazing. Thank you so much, Elsa. But I also had like on my previous company, especially, it was sometimes so funny that, you know, like you always find a situation when there's somebody who is just trying to find that where is the man? There must be somewhere a man in this game. Like, you know, they could take whoever, like a young developer, like some sort of assistant. Oh, is that the man? Or like a really old some business angel. Oh, he's the man. So it's like, no, there is no man. There is just me, you know. So sometimes you really have to kind of make it super clear for them that don't try to find somebody who would be behind this. It's me. But in a way, like, you know, in this Gold&Green company, this was founded by two ladies. Well, we also had one third co-founder who was more in the shadows, and he was like a scientist guy who was a man, but he was not in the spotlight ever. So this was more kind of like that. Then I think it changed a little bit. I think, Jessica, I don't know if you share this feeling, but kind of like when there's two ladies, there is more kind of this power duo that it's like easier to take that. Aha, here's the power duo, and like, you know, let's listen to what the ladies have in mind. So yeah, I really think that, you know, unfortunately, you sometimes have to have little theater in this.
I agree, Maija, and I also think that, like, I'm generally like a super bubbly and smiley person. And a lot of the times in investor meetings, I find it really hard to like tone that down. So so basically my approach is that like I start off being like kind of bubbly and smiley and just myself. And then I go into pitch mode as soon as that pitch deck comes out. And then it's, you know, all the numbers and all the research and, you know, very, very focused and to the point. And then after that, I think, generally they kind of understand from the pitch that, you know, we are really, really serious, and, you know, we have done our research and our work, and this is going to be a big thing. So I think that definitely helps. And I also think that something that a lot of the advisors that we have told us is that, you know, really, like, don't be afraid of numbers in your pitch deck, because I think it's kind of a natural inclination. And I've actually noticed this kind of because we work with a lot of other startups. I've noticed that a lot of the sort of male-leaning startups feel very comfortable putting out numbers, even though they're not necessarily like, you know, very sort of tested and super robust, and, you know, you have like a very complicated process behind them, but they feel very comfortable saying that, you know, we're going to have this many customers, for example. And I realized that in the beginning, we were like super skeptical about like showing any numbers that we were even like a little bit unsure of. But then eventually we were thinking that, okay, nobody is actually like, you know, unless if you're, you know, talking about an investor and you're showing them your data room, like, nobody is really going to like really go into the nitty gritty. So, you know, if it's your best educated guess and it's kind of, you know, quite well founded, then I also think you shouldn't necessarily like shy away just because you're not 100% sure if this number is actually like the correct number. You know, if you're off by some, you know, if you're off by some zeros, that might be an issue. But if you're off by, you know, if you did like, you know, 1 to 10, whatever, it's okay if it's like a rounding error, basically. So that's something that I personally have noticed. I don't know if that's like a thing with everyone else, but definitely putting more numbers in the deck really helps.
This is really fascinating, and being a, but at the same time being yourself. And I know there's some interesting stats that men actually will apply for a job that they are 50% qualified to, while women will apply when they're 100% qualified to that job. Do you agree on that term, or does that sort of fit in this, that we are preparing too much by being a woman, while a man just goes into it with confidence, overly confident?
I find it really hard to judge. I hope it's changing.
Yeah.
I feel that I'm more and more often are meeting women who believe in themselves until proven otherwise, which I think should be sort of the default state, which I think is what you're referring to with men. Like they just assume I'll get this done until proven otherwise. I feel I'm meeting more and more women who are very confident in their capability and therefore they're competent enough.
But it's normally as like, yeah, I kind of feeling that, you know, it's really like backed by some facts. That, and is that a bad thing? You know, then the women really want to know what they're capable of, and then saying that, yes, I can do this. I promise that I will do this for you. So is it actually a bad thing to be like super confident only when based with facts?
No. Yeah. It's just interesting how different we actually are, you know.
Can I just jump in on a quick thing regarding being like a female founder when fundraising?
Yeah.
We were talking about sort of the downsides, if you will, but I also want to highlight that I think there's benefits to it as well when fundraising. Like I feel that having a female founder also is you know, since there are fewer female founders, you're also a little bit more unique. So you have the possibility to stand out and actually get more attention. A man actually told me this. He was like, remember this when you're on stage, like you actually probably get more airtime than anyone else because you're a woman. So make sure to know your numbers, know what you're talking about, and then you will have both worlds. You will get the space that someone else might not, and you will be taken seriously if you know what you're doing. And I still think that there's, I mean, that's maybe not everything that is needed. We do need more change, but that's something that I bear in mind. And also, I think it benefits you for being a female founder to get you to the first meeting, which is very important as well. And it's not a given that you will get a foot in the door. But I think VCs and investors in general are actively trying to find more female founders. So I think we should also value that there's benefits to being a female founder.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, all the there's so much evidence that it really pays off having the female founders, and also like the versatility of the team is super important. So it's actually like it has higher chances of success if you have at least one female founder. So even that should be a good proof.
I agree, diversity, and that's actually a lot of reports and data that proves that. And so what we're saying is just take advantage of the opportunity, be prepared, and take advantage of the opportunity as it arises, and go for it. We have more questions here in the chat from Kelly. Can you share about your experience expanding internationally? Are sustainable products uptaken more quickly in different contexts or countries?
I can start. We've actively expanded to 2 markets outside of Sweden, so UK and France, and then we've had through our ambassador program, so like organic growth in a few more markets. But in our case, I would say it's very specific for our particular product. But yes, to some extent, I would say that it's received differently. In France, for example, they've had legislation towards grocery stores that they're fined if they're throwing away food. So therefore, like there was naturally a higher awareness, both in the industry, but also among the consumers compared to how we felt it was in Sweden. And in the UK, it was almost the opposite, where plastic is much, much higher on the agenda compared to here in Sweden, for example. So in Sweden, we've been prioritizing, debating, and talking about food waste much more, increasing the awareness around that topic, whereas in UK, people are generally maybe more environmentally conscious, but more focused on plastic, single-use of plastic. We are seeing changes there, though, but that's been like the subtle differences that we've seen. But in our case, we are very much affected by how the consumer, how much they're aware and actually willing to change their behavior. So that's why it's been so dominant in our case for the differences between the markets.
Yeah, in our case, it really has been that we have really been forced to kind of like put some limits on where can we go at the same time, because it's like, you know, like setting up the whole supply chain for new products and everything. It really takes a lot of efforts. So even though there would be like all kinds of routes open that, yeah, please come here, you know, we will help you in this and we will help you in that. It's not so easy, you know. It sounds very easy, but it's actually not. It takes a lot of resources and a lot of focus and time and everything. So kind of like more thinking about it, what is the kind of like the sustainable way of expanding. That is the thing, because it doesn't really help anybody just to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and then end up having nothing. But yeah, we have been able to expand to about 10 countries so far, so like mainly with the good partners.
I'm not sure about the rules, but can I ask a question to the other two founders? And I think maybe other
type them in.
Go for it. Chat. No, because I'm really interested to hear how you guys handle this. So, I mean, me and my co-founder Putri, we're both super passionate about sustainability, and obviously thought about Savvie around building up on impact and focusing on that. But something that we've really noticed was that when we hit the market, if that is kind of our main angle for selling the product, we actually almost close the door to a lot of people who would be relevant customers, but are not necessarily that gung-ho about sustainability. So basically what we've noticed was that, if we kind of focus on the more financial upside for the businesses that are actually going to be using this product, it actually increases the number of people that we could actually reach. So I don't know if you guys had any thoughts about, how you actually play that sustainability angle in, because of course with some people that might be a huge selling point, for other people it might not necessarily be. So yeah, really curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, maybe I could start. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what has been the main motivation before, really, like getting the business like open. So if it's for the other party, if it's only purely for the business reasons, that's actually not a problem. So if you have a product that is selling and it's tasting good and whatsoever, like if somebody doesn't even understand how big impact it has, or even if it would be not the reason for them, would it really matter? We sometimes think that like partnering with us should be also that you can trust that we take care of it, that the integrity and kind of like the sustainability angle, it's like we would take care of that, so you don't really even need to think about it. So for the partner, it should be kind of like that you just continue your business, but you can improve a little.
Yeah, because I would think that one thing, like, we didn't really want to risk kind of just preaching to the choir, right? Only reaching out to those people who really care about sustainability, because we've noticed that, where you're going to make the biggest impact is actually with these people that generally don't care, but are somehow adopting your product anyway, right? Like, for the first time, if they taste one of your plant-based products and they're like a huge meat eater and they realize that it's amazingly delicious, that's where you're going to be able to, make big change. And I'm just thinking about kind of, what your guys' thoughts on kind of reaching out to that market.
Sometimes we had, like, there was one in one chain, there was a burger they wanted to have, and they just wanted to put the bacon in it. Having the plant-based burger, but then selling it with bacon. So at the end of the day, who cares? Like it's still like a less meat.
I mean, I can really relate to what you're mentioning there, Jessica, and I think you already answered the question yourself. I mean, if you have customers that are in particular more driven by the financial upside, then I think that's what you need to get across with your product. So, which is what we've noticed as well. Like in our case, like there's, our personas among our sellers are so different. It's like they're very different drivers from a small cafe or bakery or a multi-POS of 10 places or a big coffee chain of 200 places. Like they have very different motivations for using our product. So we've adapted the pitch towards what kind of seller is it, but also who's the stakeholder within that organization, because that also differs, because they are looking at different KPIs. So we map out like a very clear like seller persona journey where we see like, okay, now we're talking to the operations manager, or now it's sustainability manager or whatnot. So we've definitely experienced like throwing numbers at a small cafe who doesn't really care about those numbers at all. We only like, you know, pick one and that's the only thing that they care about, and then that's enough, and that will save you a lot of time.
Definitely. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Well, that was interesting, and thank you for asking the questions, Jessica. This is exactly what we want, the dialogue between the three of you. We have an interesting question here from Robin. How are you using innovation to reach communities that are experiencing food deserts? Is that something any of you want to answer to? And it got quiet. Was that a little too...
Maybe we don't have exactly like that as focus. I mean, I'm sure that all of us really understand that this is a big problem. But is it like really targeted exactly for that? Maybe not.
Well, here's another one. What is the best way to sell and market a completely new food, such as a vegan protein, where the consumer has no point of reference or has a negative reference from previous vegan protein tries? Since marketing is expensive, how do you drive consumers to try your product? How do you convert a consumer then?
Maybe I could start with that. Yeah, so I mean, this is a very valid question. And sometimes, you know, we really use the metaphor that, you know, the big companies can just, you know, explode their way through the rocks. And this is never possible for the small startups. So you really cannot just, you know, pay your way to the consumer's heart. So you have to just, you kind of like try to find all the possible routes, and you know what could be the right route. So far what I could say is that I really think that the partners are really the key in here. Like if you think about that, the guys who are serving the food out there, this is really the shortcut, because if you think about that, you're supposed to cook for the family, then it's kind of like for an individual consumer, it's actually a quite big risk. You cook something that they didn't like, and you waste your money and you waste your food or whatsoever. You made a fool out of yourself. But if you are just buying that nice looking burrito that somebody has made, and why not? You know, maybe it's like a nicely priced and looking good and everything. So these guys are really doing the education. So that's I really think that's the best route you could have. Just as an example, like, you know, for the Taco Bell, that we are working with the Taco Bell for 5 markets so far, and it's really like this really has been like a great evidence that in some markets they were just asking that, could you give us like some sort of a certificate that we could put on the wall that it really is vegan, because it tasted so good. So it could not be vegan. It's too good to be vegan. So in a way, I think that this kind of stuff is really the best marketing for the whole industry. That, you know, when there's something that they feel that is so good and still it's vegan, it's so much more likely that they would choose the vegan option on the other cafeteria as well. So yeah, education happening to the out-of-home providers.
Yeah, I would probably first and foremost maybe challenge how the question is phrased, because I think it's very dangerous to say like the best way, because I personally think there's many ways. And it all depends on not only the product itself, but when you're launching the product, what team do you have, what's happening around in the market when you do it. Like there's so many different circumstances that will affect what the best way is at that point in time, and it's constantly changing. But that being said, I usually try to think of, do we want to do it pull or push, meaning that like sort of push if maybe you have a big marketing budget, which is rarely the case as a startup. But if you do, like maybe then you have time to sort of push it, like throw it down their, throw it in their faces, push it down their throats, or, you know, which can mean a lot of things, and you need to choose which channels to do so. But another approach could be the opposite, where you actually go more a pull in a way where you're like, okay, we're actually going to create some mystique or exclusivity around the product. Even though it might not be a premium product, you can still have, you know, the way a lot of services have done it now, like not a good comparison, maybe product wise, but like Spotify in the beginning, like no one could have it. You were only like a limited few who could use it, and that created this push that everybody wanted to join. There's so many different companies who've done this still, or like how you do in the fashion industry when you have these drops where you just like feel that like there's only a few and you need to sort of wait until you can get it. I wouldn't say that this is applicable for food items in particular, but I would personally sit down and ask myself, like, which approach do I believe in our case? And then finally, one thing that we did wrong in the beginning, which was one of the reasons for our first 9 months of failure, was that we tried to sort of attract everyone and ended up attracting no one, which is like a classic mistake. But just to really, really do the exercise of like, who's the first customer, not the first 100, like who's the first? Who, like, how will that look like? Who is she? Who is he? What are they doing? How do they find it? Okay, and after that person has used it, like, why will he or she really love it? And where will they be and where will they find them, and who are the next 10? And I found that when asking those questions, it made it easier for us to find which channels we think that we should use when we really, really feel that we know these 10 people. We don't need to reach more, but then usually ended up reaching more because these people will spread the word.
I agree with Elsa. I think the most important thing is to, really understand your market and really understand, what are the circumstances going on around you in the market that you're trying to launch the product, and really understand kind of who that target customer is, and really kind of do your research to figure out, what is actually the best way to reach them, and just kind of, be really focused and try to kind of, because of course, as a startup, you don't have the biggest marketing budget in the world. So you can't be on all the platforms and have all the bloggers and whatever you do these days for marketing. But really try to understand like what is actually the best way to reach that ideal customer, that first customer. That's going to be really important for you.
Thank you, ladies. We have about 3 minutes left. So I want to end this asking you guys what kind of recommendation excuse me, do you have for women entrepreneurs starting up today? Anything particularly you want to sort of advise them on or give them some input on? Tough one.
I would probably, first and foremost, just do it. But then secondly, I would recommend, and I think it's regardless whether you're a female or a male founder, but just create a supporting network, informal mentors, like people you can just chat with, ask tons of questions constantly. And you can have so many people within that network. And I found that really helpful, at least.
I could continue from what Elsa is saying, because I used to say sometimes that like the only way of failing is refusing from help. Because if you are really like using the help that people are able to give to you, and kind of like all the advice that they could give to you, and like digest it and think about it, and like, do whatever corrective actions you could. If you still do that and this is not the right thing to do, then it's not a failure, it's then just kind of like this path just didn't lead anywhere. You have to turn back and go somewhere else. So not just to kind of like try to be too kind of like independent and too much like trying to think about that only I can do it. But you have the whole world out there waiting for you, and like people are really eager to help you when you really come with a kind of like a clear idea and like really the passion and open heart.
Thing that I would say is kind of don't be shy. Don't kind of pull back and like leverage your network for all it's worth, and reach out to people that you've been introduced to maybe just once. You never know what's gonna come back at you, and the worst thing people can say is no. So yeah, don't be shy.
Thank you all, ladies. So we wrap up with don't be shy, just do it, accept all the help you can, lean in, prepare well, and go for it. Thank you all so much, and I hope you will all stay and enjoy the rest of the conference. There's a lot of interesting panels to follow. There's also this networking function, so if you want to chat with each other or others, please stay and use it. Use the platform for what it's worth, and Congratulations to all the women out there, and stay keeping positive. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.